Shame can feel like a life sentence. You replay what you should have said, what you should have seen, what you should have prevented. But here's the truth. You cannot punish yourself into safety. The illusion of control. When harm happens, the brain searches for control. It's the way that we think that if we can control the outcomes, we can keep ourselves safe. If I had done X, if I had left sooner, if I had known. Self-blame creates the illusion that you have more power than you actually do. But control and responsibility are not the same thing. Rumination as a neural path. Rumination becomes a well-worn path in the brain. The more you walk it, the easier it is to return. Repetition strengthens neural pathways in your brain. It's almost like your route home from work, right? That is the route that you could do with your eyes closed, although I wouldn't recommend it while driving, of course. But you could do it with your eyes closed. Or have you ever had a moment where you've been on your way home and all of a sudden you realize you're home and you don't remember anything from the drive? It's almost like you were teleported there, which clearly you know that you weren't because you were actually driving and obeying the traffic laws and all that. Shame makes the loop feel true. But repetition doesn't equal accuracy. It just means that that neural pathway has been created because you have been beating yourself up so badly. You have been taking the place of someone who likes to criticize you. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the point is when you don't hear criticism, you know that you should expect criticism, so you become the person who criticizes yourself. And I know that sounds completely crazy or illogical or anything you want to call it. Silly, right? But ultimately, I think a lot of us who grew up in dysfunctional systems have learned and have grown accustomed to being told that we were not enough or that we weren't doing things correctly, or hearing that people were gossiping about us or talking about our mistakes and how we screwed up and what we should be doing and what we're not doing and what we need to be doing. I know for sure that I am. I get that a lot, unfortunately. Repetition does not equal responsibility. Let me say that one more time. Repetition does not equal responsibility. Let's talk about how shame turns inward. Shame literally turns inward, meaning if something goes wrong, if something bad happens, you assign the shame and the responsibility of what you didn't do, maybe you should have done, and you take that as a sign that you are responsible for what occurred. And when the shame turns inward, you know what happens? It often results in you not trusting yourself. It often results in you potentially neglecting your own needs because you feel like you failed yourself so poorly that this all is your fault. And you have to serve this sentence of shame because what you did was wrong and what you did caused this whole thing, and you have no one to blame but yourself. Time out for a second, because nothing could be further from the truth. If you've had a scenario that created trauma in your life, pain in your life, hurt in your life, whatever that situation was, you know that sometimes we assign responsibility to ourselves for things that we had nothing to do with. If what you experienced was at the hands of another individual, that you didn't have privy to their thoughts, their motives, what they were like, what they were about, what they had planned. You had no share of responsibility in that. And oftentimes we are so hard on ourselves and we shame ourselves so doggedly that we're almost overcompensating. We want to punish ourselves for things that we had nothing to do with. Call it a guilt complex. Call it an over-responsibility complex. I know I struggle with that sometimes. I take on things that do not belong to me because I've been used to taking things for other people that should have been theirs, that they should have bore, but they didn't want to because they didn't have the ability to take it, because they were a person who didn't want to accept responsibility for things that they did. Maybe you know people like that in your life. I'm sure many of you do. It can also lead to disordered eating, right? And disordered eating, it comes from a place of trying to overcompensate, trying to heal. These are healing mechanisms that are not the healthiest mechanisms, right? And when you're down in the dumps and when you're kicking yourself around, you're trying to cope with what you feel like has been a screw up on your part or that you are responsible for, and you don't know how to deal with it. And it's emotional and it's probably anxiety ridden. Maybe it keeps you up at night. Thoughts running through your head, racing through your head. You also try to stay small. And then you don't want to advocate for yourself because you feel like you have failed your own self. And ultimately, you're being too hard on yourself. No one is perfect. No one is required to be perfect. You're required to do what feels best for you. And so, yeah, if you see yourself engaging in, not neglecting your own needs, maybe you're not eating, maybe you're binge eating as a way to comfort yourself a little bit. Or maybe you're engaging in disordered eating, not eating at all, or any number of things, right? And not advocating for yourself because you don't feel you deserve it. Guess what? We all deserve to be compassionate to ourselves. We all make mistakes, and I'm not saying that this situation is necessarily a mistake. I'm saying that we have to be compassionate with ourselves. And so when shame goes unchallenged, it becomes self-punishment. And ultimately, you don't need to punish yourself, right? For something that you had no role in. You cannot rewrite an outcome you were never given the power to change. Responsibility belongs to the person who made the harmful, hurtful choice that injured you. You are responsible for your healing, but you are not required to carry someone else's shame. Thank you for tuning in to Recovering Perfectionist Mama, Grace in Progress. And I hope that this gave you some encouragement, and hopefully you will be able to get past this little hurdle and get where you need to be and stop shaming yourself and stop beating yourself up for something that you had no control over. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and hopefully you'll tune in again soon to Recovering Perfectionist Mama. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of your night. Good night. Bye-bye.